All right.
Hi, everyone. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let's go ahead and do a roll call whenever you're ready.
Okay. Greg Patton.
Present.
Essie Snell.
Here.
Jonathan Koffler. He's here. Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Tatiana Daknova.
Here.
Mike Foster.
Here.
Steve Sane.
I see Jonathan and Steven's names in the attendees, so they may not be able to speak.
Okay.
Because they're not.
I think they clicked on the wrong link.
Let me try to promote them to panelists real quick here. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Something just definitely changed though on my screen. So
yeah, I actually just promoted. Yeah, thanks. I just promoted you two to panelists, so I think we're all good now. So, all right, Becky Ho.
Here.
Mike Henshin.
Here.
And Jim Zarski.
Here.
All right, thank you.
I think you're up, Essie. Agenda approval. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was muted. Sorry. What I was trying to say is I want to welcome Greg as our newest volunteer and see if Greg, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Essie. My name is Greg Patton, new resident to Superior, appointed last month, I guess, by the town. I guess I can go through my resume if you want. So I am a Chief Sustainability Officer for a commercial real estate company here in Denver, where I oversee the internal and external clients' sustainability efforts, things like lead consulting, healthy building consulting, energy efficiency, and other sustainability type of projects. Excited to be here, be part of the team.
Cool, thanks so much.
Yeah.
All right. Did anyone have any amendments they want to make to the agenda?
This is Mike Foster. I don't have an amendment to the agenda, but I have an amendment to last month's meeting minutes. There's a typo under 5F. It should be fall leaf cleanup, not leave cleanup.
Thanks for catching that. Does anyone know what the process is that we should follow for adjusting that, or I'm not sure what the next steps would be?
Yeah, Essie, I can let Karen know, and then she can update them and make sure that they're updated for the town board packet and on the website. So.
Okay, that'd be great. All right.
Thank you.
My computer is finally working, so I'm going to hop over in just a second. Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience, everyone. So I didn't hear any amendments to the agenda, so I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda as it currently stands.
Mike Foster, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
yep.
Okay. So we'll move on to public comment. Is there any public comment, Brian?
I do not see anyone joining us for public comment, so I think we can move on from that.
Okay, great. Well, Ken, I want to get see if you had any update on budgeting for the sustainability analyst position within the town, and just kind of anything you've heard on that front.
Yep. So the budget has not yet been officially adopted. That is part of the agenda for this coming Monday's meeting. But we did have our second budget review meeting where we don't vote on it, but we dig into the weeds. That was another, I think it was 5 hours or 6 hours on the budget. But overall, there was support for the sustainability position. So that is going to be in what gets brought to us. And I did not hear a lot of objection to that position in the last budget meeting. So I don't think we're going to see anybody try to remove it on Monday night. So I think we're all good there. I did get a little bit more detail as to what the xeriscaping funds were set aside for. And Brian, I don't know if you have any more information than I do, but mostly it is set aside to start making the medians and other areas around intersections that do have grass still less resource intensive and take out that grass and transition it to a xeriscape format. Brian, did you have any other information on that?
Yeah, I actually do not. No.
I did bring up the presentation that you all received last month, and that there could be some desire to move forward with adding some pollinator friendly landscape within the tract H area, and I didn't hear any objections. So if that's something you guys are still interested in, when eventually, whenever you are ready to put forth a recommendation to the board, I think that would be the appropriate next step.
Okay. Cool. We've got that coming up in the discussion items, so that'll be perfect.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. So I guess then we can move on to the first discussion item, which is trying to hopefully finalize our recommendations for the town's sustainability goals and discuss next steps. Mike Henshin, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, that might be the easiest way to go.
Yeah, let me stop sharing here real quick, and then.
All right, thanks.
There we go.
And Greg, for reference, these are a set of broad sustainability goals that we've been slowly working on over time to recommend that the town board adopts. Right now, the town has a very big goal of just improving sustainability. So the hope is to come up with some more kind of specific, actionable metrics and goals that we can measure against. So that's what this is about.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and just for further context, it's open for discussion, but what we proposed last time is to try to reach an agreement among this committee today, and then plan for a process where we would get some public input on that before proposing it formally to the board. So that would also be for discussion, what the best way to get public comment. But what's on my screen, it is in a Google Doc. If others want to access it directly and haven't had the link before, please let me know. But we're trying to get to a manageable number of goals. Right now there are 5 primary goals. I think that's about the right target. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves with too many, but try to identify the priorities for sustainability in this town. We did reach some agreements last time. One of them was to set a common date for achieving these goals. So these are all 2025 objectives. We agreed that down in the same document, we would include some notes or some key strategies to achieve the goals. And so we can expand on those as we see fit. And at the moment, for discussion last time, we sort of broke these into 2 tiers and had a primary set of goals and then a secondary set of goals. I think open for discussion, but we may want to, keep notes on the secondary goals, but maybe take them out. Open for discussion how important it is to even have those. Great, and then Greg is asking for the link to the doc. Yeah, let's see if I can. Someone else, I don't know if Ezzy or Mike, you guys have been in this. If you're in a position to share it with,
Yeah, I'll share it with Greg.
I probably need to share it with you so you have permission to access it. Greg, do you want to? If you're willing to read out your email address on the recording here, I'll type you in and get you.
Yes, that's fine. It's gdanielpatton@gmail.com.
There you go. Okay, no, that should give you access to edit.
Thank you.
Great. So at the moment we've got 5. After the last meeting, Lisa Skumatz also sent a Word doc with her recommendations. So I've included some of those. I can just tell you, I can revisit what they are and then let's discuss. I mean, the 5 here, air quality at number 1, I believe this one had pretty consistent support and agreement last time to get our ozone is the pollutant in which we are historically in violation every year, at least have been for more than a decade, in violation of the EPA standard. So one goal is to get that under that standard. Climate, we've said get our greenhouse gas emissions at least 25% lower. So this is basically the same as what the state's goal is in state policy. Waste, I have updated, which is, this was Lisa's recommendation in her email, so I've deferred to that, to reduce waste generation per household by 15%. Energy, we have edited since last time. We combined multiple energy goals into one. How I've written it is to reduce the combined electricity and natural gas use. We can add per capita, but there would be 2 ways we would do this. One would be through more efficient use of the energy and more efficient buildings. Second would be from fuel switching from natural gas to electricity, which is a more, in energy terms, is more efficient usage of it. So we haven't talked about what the right percentage target is there, but that's how I've proposed that. And then water, we've said reduce per capita domestic water consumption by 10%. So this is what's risen to the top, but happy to talk through these. There's some comments in here from Ezzy and from Mike, open for people's thoughts.
Hey, Mike.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Don.
I'm sorry. Me?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Don.
Okay. Hi. I have a question about electric vehicles. And I'm sure everybody knows that, there has been a discussion how electric vehicles are not as green, as they are sometimes described. But I just wanted to say something that I, face in my work as an environmental organization where we give grants all over the world for, community groups. So we have been given a lot of grants in Africa for local indigenous communities against mining. And some of the mining is for cobalt and nickel. One of the ingredients, parts for those electric batteries is cobalt. And it's mined mostly in Africa. And I don't want to take too much time, but I'm just trying to say that the mining in Africa is devastating to the local communities, not just because it's, toxic to their air, water, soil, it's degraded agricultural lands, poor crop yield, human rights abuses. And I'm just trying to say that it's the companies right now that are producing electric vehicles are trying so hard to minimize those effects, first of all, on local communities where stuff is mined. And second of all, it's carbon footprint by, delivering these batteries. Like I was reading this article recently that Elon Musk, he wants to produce batteries for Teslas that are going to be used in the United States, and to produce batteries for Teslas that are going to be used in China, which is minimizes, the carbon footprint. So I've been thinking about it, and it's great. I myself have Nissan Leaf. I mean, I love electric cars, but I'm just thinking that maybe it's not as, it's great to say we have now all electric, trash, trucks. But I'm just thinking maybe, which is, great, but I'm thinking right now in the world, the most important problem is scarcity of resources. So and educating community about consumption, proper recycling, I feel it should be also very important on sustainability goals. And just to, sorry if I'm taking too much time, but I myself sometimes struggle with recycling. I don't know what goes where. So I was just thinking maybe some educational event for community, or some flyers maybe, some bright, I don't know, posters with some iconographics, this goes here and this goes here, because honestly, me and my friends sometimes are like, am I supposed to wash it? Am I supposed to get, it's like a reminder. And I feel like constant education of people about, consumption and proper recycling is as important as having electric vehicles, which are, sometimes maybe not as green. And I hope it makes sense. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, and actually, as part of the Partners Energy program, Lisa Skubmatz did a lot of research about best messaging for recycling, and so I think it'd be great to, for ACES to continue to share that messaging going forward. And I think that could, tie directly with the waste goal here. So I think that'd be excellent.
And this is Mike Foster. I've got a thought on the waste goal here. in looking at the other goals around air, climate, energy, water, these are really community-wide goals, whereas the waste is really focused on residential. And so I'm wondering if we go back to this idea of increasing waste diversion rate to over 30%. If you look at the City of Golden's sustainability goals, they have a goal of reducing waste to landfills by 40% by 2030. So I also think that messaging to the public will be easier. It's easier for folks to understand, reducing garbage to landfill by 30% or increasing waste diversion to over 30% is easier to understand than waste generation. I think for folks that work in the waste industry, that's a very common term, but if we're trying to get broad community support and buy-in and understanding what these goals are, I think we need to be conscious and aware of the words that we're using. So again, my recommendation would be that we change the waste goal to something like increase waste diversion to over 30%, or reduce waste to landfill by 30%, something like that. Something that's, in my mind, a little bit more clear for the community.
Yeah, hearing that, I have two thoughts. One, Tatiana, is it helpful in response to your comments if in the strategies below, if in the waste strategies we make a comment about improving education about recycling or something along those lines. But as a strategy, I feel like that I believe that supports what I just heard from you. And then
that would be great if we could include it. I know the RFP is already on the street, but in my mind, that would have been a great opportunity to include that in the solid waste RFP. That's Holler sending out more frequent education than once a year. Because Tatiana's point, Superior is continuing to grow, and there's a lot of new residents moving in, and having like a recycling guide for new residents would be, I think, super helpful, and really educate people from the get-go when they first move to Superior. Oh, this is what goes where.
Great. Okay, I put that down there. And then the other question was like, what's the right goal? So there's three different things in here now. And then Mike, I heard you suggest two versions of it. So one of them is here. It's currently in the secondary. We could move it up and swap these around. It says increased waste diversion rate to over 30%. That's what we had up there before. Yeah. I also heard you phrase it alternately as instead of
Reducing, yeah, reducing waste to landfill. I think that's, in my mind, is more clear because people can understand, oh, I'm sending less stuff to the landfill by recycling. So reducing waste to landfill by 30%.
Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion, so happy to just type based on the input of the group here.
Yeah, I'm happy if either one have a strong opinion one way or another. I'm not sure if anyone else does.
In general terms, I don't know if the order of these things matter, but I sort of see the number one, the air quality, reduce ozone pollution below the EPA. I almost see that as an unachievable goal because it's not in our direct control, and it's less tangible. It would be less tangible to the average person. So I'd almost want to put that down towards the bottom of the list. While I see it's a admirable goal, I just don't see it as achievable. Whereas the other ones, it's like much easier to kind of like say, oh, I can change these behaviors, and the impact will happen. Or with, for example, with waste, but air quality it's sort of abstract or not as, I don't know,
Tangible. Yeah.
Tangible.
And I think indirectly, by reducing greenhouse gas emissions through energy efficiency, making more energy efficient buildings, reducing waste to landfill, water conservation, all of these have a cumulative effect of adding or contributing to air pollution, climate change. So by taking a variety of little steps, they're all helping towards this larger objective.
Yeah, so I moved that down. Happy to do so. I will say on the air quality that we know it's known what the contributors to that problem are. It is true that it's a regional problem, so much of the pollution comes from outside of Superior. But
I didn't look, and one more thing with regards to reducing ozone, especially. I went to a talk up at NCAR, which was really well done by a climate scientist, and there's surprising impact of and I didn't look at the strategies to achieve goals. I'm sorry, this is a great document, but I haven't had time to contribute to it. But down with ozone, surprisingly, not filling your gas during daytime hours has an impact on ozone, and running lawnmowers has a reasonably large impact on the ozone that we see. So not making use of those or doing those things during high ozone events.
But this is another issue where things like that, so having some sort of outreach, right, to remind people of these things. Right?
Yeah, and I can find some resources with that so that we could maybe possibly word it appropriately, but if you put a bookmark in there.
I think maybe one thing to do is to, we can keep talking about the key strategies, but I think if we can, I'm not sure if we necessarily need to give the key strategies to the board or have that be something that more informs our own work.
I would agree.
But I think right now, particularly for tonight, since we've got a number of other items to discuss, if we can focus on just the core goals for now, I think that'd be helpful, and then we can get those kind of solidified and then keep fleshing out the key strategies, because I think there's a lot of different really good ideas for things we could do. So I just want to make sure we're, focused for now.
Yeah, we could talk about this for a long. This could take many hours.
Yeah, I know we're all passionate about this.
Yeah, so that's good encouragement to focus on just the top 5 here or whatever it is. But so let me try to wrap up a couple things. So that reduce waste to landfill is fine, or I'm supportive of that. Do we feel that needs to be a per capita number?
I don't think that needs to be per capita. I think that's just citywide or townwide, rather. Excuse me.
And then you said 30%. I don't have any good mental benchmark for if 30% is the right number or not. Do you have a sense of that?
So I think 30% would be a stretch, which is fine. The statewide diversion rate's about 12%. So, trying to double the statewide diversion rate, I think is ambitious. It's again, and if we're able to get increased composting and recycling services in this new RFP, that's going to provide additional opportunities for the town to really achieve, stretch towards this goal.
Well,
Okay,
if doubling the 12% is a good goal, then maybe this should be 25, right? I mean, we're quibbling over a few percent, but maybe that's a little more realistic, right?
Fair point.
Yeah, and just to be clear, you're saying that the 12% is a rate. So what portion of total waste goes somewhere other than landfill? But what the goal is written here is a total amount, not a rate. So
right, and I think we want to reduce the total amount going to landfill.
Or like a total volume.
I think we want to reduce the total amount going to landfill.
Yeah, so like already there's whatever it is. Maybe we've got a 12% rate. I forget our number. But to get, but then to cut down 30% from where we are today might require a big jump in diversion rate and what people just using less trash, generating less trash. Do we feel good about that?
Or recycling, more, and again, working with the new hauler, whoever that is, or the existing hauler to improve their operations and efficiencies and find markets for these harder to reach recycled materials. So there's a lot packed into this that the town will obviously need to wrap its arms around, but I think setting something ambitious is not a bad thing.
Okay.
Any
other?
I have a quick question, sorry, regarding waste. Actually, maybe it's not related, but the dog waste bags that we have through the town, they're not compostable, right?
No.
They're not recyclable. They're just plastic, right?
It's garbage.
Well, there are two different ones. So at the dog park, those bags are compostable, and we have a dog waste compost system in place. The rest of the town are non-compostable bags, and the reason for that currently is that it's been really difficult to figure out a way to ensure that those bags would actually be composted, and especially in a lot of the town-wide facilities, there's a lot of other trash that gets mixed in, and so it's more of a logistics problem so far. Whereas the dog park, it's a lot easier to ensure that people are just going to use the right bags, and there's less work that has to be done to filter out extra trash. So.
Okay. Because when
If you guys want, if you guys want a few data points here, I just pulled up City of Boulder's webpage, and their diversion rate in 2017 was 51%. In 2018, it's 57%. The city's goal is 85% by 2025. And, since we share a lot of the trash services, recycling, all that stuff here in Boulder County, I'm not saying our goal should be 85%, but I don't see why we can't be shooting a little higher than 25 or 30%.
Yeah, well,
Don't they require composting, household composting, however?
No, that's a fact. You're right. That's spot on. I guess maybe
I mean, so shooting for something that we have no chance of getting because we don't even have those services. I mean, I don't mind pushing for those services, but jumping to 85% is a lot when we're not even close.
Well, and to that point, if our benchmark year is 2025, I would wholeheartedly agree 85% is probably not going to be doable. If we were going to set, like a zero waste goal by 2050, but again, we're trying to keep all the goals within 1 year. So I think whether it's 25% or 30% reduction to landfill is probably more achievable and attainable and more realistic, and also a stretch. I know Becky, I haven't heard Becky comment on any of these goals, so I'd be curious to hear her thoughts on these.
I definitely think that a lot of the goals that we have down are like really smart. I'm just like trying to like think of like a way that to like make them make more sense to like people who don't really like care too much about like the statistics stuff. Like I know my brothers and my parents, we all really care about like compost and recycling and all that kind of stuff, but we don't, like if you give us a number, like you want to reduce everybody's waste by this amount, it's like kind of disheartening. I'm just like trying to think of something along those lines.
I think it's great we're going to need to contextualize these at some point, right? To get people to understand, you know, I couldn't tell you if I could reduce mine by 30% or not. What does that mean for when I'm putting, you know, recycling in the bin? But I still think we can have these goals. Then as we talked about earlier, I think that's a great, one of those strategies should be contextualization, right? You know, give people a better sense of what these really mean for them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I think there's also room for us to have sort of more, you know, numericals for the town. And then one of the things our committee can do can really be to contextualize those to help town residents better understand what those actually mean and what actions they can take to help. So
putting one less garbage bag into your garbage cart each week as a contextualized example.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's sort of equal opinion about waste reduction being above or below 30. Should we just leave it at 30 for now, or does one feel strongly about? It seems like 30 would be achievable with action for the town, especially given where Boulder is. Obviously, Boulder has more resources that we don't have, especially with regards to town events or city events. And that's something that's come up in the past, is that it's really hard for us to get staff to help make sure that, you know, we have 100% composting and recycling at our events, things like that. So I think aiming, like benchmarking using Boulder might be difficult, but I certainly think, you know, 30% should be doable, I would think, based on very little, I suppose. But
I do think that 30% is achievable, especially with some of the other strategies that we've talked about with events and engaging the Chamber of Commerce to raise awareness within the business community to recycle more, and potentially looking at some of our ordinances around construction demolition recycling, especially with all the new development that's going on. So there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot to unpack within this. And I think, especially with the sustainability position, hopefully getting approved by the town board next Monday and probably getting in place next year, that'll be an opportunity for the town to really dive into this.
okay, well, if everyone's okay with it, why don't we leave it at 30%? Because I think that's, you know, still going to require some work to get there, but it should be achievable for now. And we can always increase the goals later, depending on how we're doing as a town. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Works for me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. For energy, if it's okay if I jump to the next one, I think 10% per capita seems like a really reasonable goal. Golden has a goal of 15% per capita, and that's by 2030. So I think, you know, 10% is a pretty big chunk. And I think it's framed in such a way that there are a lot of different ways that you could get to that goal beyond just rate efficiency. And so I think 10% would be pretty doable, and I like having the per capita goal given the town's growth plans. So any other thoughts on that particular goal?
I would agree.
Okay.
Yep, same.
One thing I did want to bring up, and I hate to do this at this point, but I was listening to the League of Women Voters debate for the town trustee candidates. And both candidates and current trustees suggested that they would really support having the town adopt a goal to help meet the Ready for 100 initiative from the Sierra Club. And so I put an example of how Golden's framed that. And so given that there seems to be interest in that particular initiative from multiple current trustees and also potential candidates for trustee, I wanted to get people's thoughts about changing the climate goal to a renewables goal, and then having a goal that would be in line with the Ready for 100 initiative. I think the other benefit of moving from a climate goal to a renewables goal would be that, you know, some of the other things that we touch on, like energy particularly, but also waste, also do have an impact on climate. And so it would be a little bit more specific about what we're looking at. And so the example from Golden is to achieve 100% renewable energy for electricity by 2030 and 100% renewables for heating by 2050. And so that's one example of the type of goal that we could consider adopting. But I just want to get other people's thoughts first off on whether it makes sense to sort of change that goal a little bit more fundamentally, or if we should just not worry about it, because I do think the climate goal as written is a good one. It's just that it won't be as clearly aligned with the Ready for 100 initiative, if that's something that the town board wants to pursue. And,
So
and Ken, that would give feedback as well.
How does the current goal stack up with the Paris Accord? Would that put us in line with it?
The climate goals do. So we've indexed our climate goal to the state goal, and the state goal is aligned. The state goal is, yeah, aligned with Paris.
Okay.
Basically. Which
So-
is
so I mean, I guess
25% by 2025, it gets to 50% by 2030 and 90% by 2050.
So that goal would be consistent with what you're talking about, Essie, right? I mean, my only issue with the renewables is how that would mean us having to really do something with Excel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how actually even feasible would that be to do in the next 5 years?
On town facilities, sorry, this is Mike Foster. On town facilities, I think it would be way more straightforward than getting the rest of the community on renewables.
Right.
The town could say, you know what, we're going to do a power purchase agreement and basically put solar up on all of our parking lots and rooftops of all of our, community buildings. And we're going to be in really good shape from a municipal energy or renewable energy perspective.
Well, so that already shows up in the secondary goals, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my overall point is I think these things are already built in, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we've stated the primary goal is consistent with the Paris Accords, right? And then these secondary goals are about the renewables. I think going beyond that gets really tricky. I don't know. That's just my thought. Maybe other people see a clearer path.
And to your point, I do think that meeting our current climate goal as written, we could make the argument that the town is positioned for the Ready for 100 initiative if that's something that the town wants.
Well, I like your idea though of maybe rewriting it to be consistent with that, right? But it sort of seems like they're already there, just maybe not worded that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean well, a couple points here. I mean, one is like it would be two different goals, like town operations versus the whole community. And in the forum you're describing, there were a couple different points made, but Trustee Lacis's proposal was town operations, and then other proposals were community-wide. So there are a couple different things out there. Personally, what I see is in Boulder is they've got the 100% community-wide by 2030 goal, and that's just driven a lot of contention with because the way they figured they would meet that is by forming their own utility, and that's become a very contentious process, which I think we should avoid. Inferior. So that's my reservation around the Ready for 100 part in particular, but also I recognize multiple trustees and candidates are supporting it, and it may be important to them at the end of the day.
Well, then maybe we should just leave it as is, as it's currently written, which is broader on greenhouse gas emissions, which I like personally for multiple reasons.
Yep. I agree.
And then if the town trustees want to, adopt initiative to become involved in the Ready for 100 initiative, that will help with that climate goal. But something that they can do. So, okay. So that sounds good. Then water, I think the comments around water were really about whether we want to focus on domestic water or just water in general. And my own feelings is that domestic water makes a lot more sense because that's, where a lot of effort and energy goes into processing compared with gray water and other things. And so I think, focusing on domestic water, to me at least, makes a lot of sense. But a few other people have different views on that.
This is Mike Foster. I would agree. Domestic water's per capita reduction is probably where we want to be.
Okay.
Is there water reduction goals at the town level too that we have stated somewhere here?
Like for the town's own operations, water use, or for the entire community, including the businesses?
Well, the reduced per capita domestic water use would be town-wide, and the way I would interpret that.
Yeah, same.
Oh, okay. Somehow
and
I
if
thought
we-
domestic meant residential, but maybe I'm mistaken there.
Yeah, but isn't like the water used for irrigation is different water, right? It's gray water, right? I'm not sure I'm using the terms right, but it's
Recycled water, yeah.
yeah. It's not. I mean, they are different. You're talking about very different things, right?
Yeah, domestic is essentially quote unquote fresh water
Yeah.
that comes out of your tap, and yeah, that's I think we want to reduce the amount of that, and that's going to be the same water that people use to water their own private lawns.
Well, that's what I see. Yeah, this is about watering lawns and
indoor water use,
right,
things like that, whether it's in a business or a home.
Mm-hmm.
Or in a community building.
Hey, this is Greg. I have a question. Are these goals separate from? I know that we have a big residential base here in Superior, but are there separate goals, or these are just all bundled into the town of Superior, like separate commercial and residential?
Well, this is as far as our proposal development. This covers it. So there's nothing else that's not on this sheet. And on the water goal, I think we were just saying that this encompasses both residential and commercial.
Yeah, Greg,
the reuse water.
I think the intent, Greg, is for this to cover the entire community, both residential and commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, the idea is to have a sort of pretty concise list of goals that's more specific than what we currently have, but covers a couple different sustainability areas.
So per capita is commercial and residential domestic use combined. Drinking water, basically.
Yep. So if we're using 1 million gallons of fresh water a year and we've got whatever 20,000 residents, you do the math, and the goal is to reduce that by 10% by 2025. Obviously accounting for population growth.
Do we want to have the a reduction for the town irrigation? I know it's reclaimed water, but still water. It's being used. I know this ties into other things we're working on, like zero-scaping and sprinkler discussions and stuff like that, but it's all related. But call out separately for that.
I mean, I think the way this is stated now, I think that might be an excellent thing to put in the secondary goals.
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
I'm not sure we can elevate it at this point.
Okay.
I think one of the goals that when I first taken a crack at this, I had said like increase recycled water usage by 15%, something along those lines, because that really implies on the municipal side, since we're using it for irrigating landscaping, or potentially expand it to use for flushing toilets. I know that's can be very controversial, but the intent is to increase the purple pipe water usage.
Well, even there, I mean, the intent would be to reduce the potable water usage. Like
Correct.
That's what you achieve by, you don't want to just increase recycled water for its own sake. You only do it displace potable water use. So I think that's the focus of the objective as written. And then, James, as I was listening to the discussion, I added to the secondary goal a comment about total use, including recycled water. Okay, well, we've discussed each of these top 5. What's our general sense of where we are, if people are feeling comfortable or have objections or edits still?
It seems like we're in a pretty good place. What would be the next step, right? I mean, we vote and approve on these things, and then what? We send them on.
Yeah, so either we could make a motion right now to, recommend that the board adopt these goals. But one idea that came up at the last meeting was to do some community outreach and get some feedback from town residents about the proposed goals as well. And that could help potentially, provide an additional level of support to encourage the town board to adopt these beyond just proposing them and then having it be sort of up to the board's opinions. So Ken, do you have any thoughts on what might be the most effective next steps?
Yeah, so I think that the community outreach isn't a bad idea. I think it could happen either before you send a recommendation up to the board, or if you wanted to send a recommendation and then just continue to do community outreach over the next year and have that in your work plan for 2021. That I think would be useful as well. But one thing to also consider is whether or not it makes more sense to send a recommendation up to the board now by approving it tonight, or whether it makes more sense to wait until after the elections. If you were to send it up now, it could hit a board that is about to turn over. I mean, who knows what's going to happen during the elections, but since the intent is to get more long-lasting buy-in, it might make more sense to send this up to the next iteration of the town board. That way we don't get new people on the board and say, well, no, that I don't agree with that. That's not what I voted on, or anything along those lines. So just something else to think about.
So, see, this is Mike Foster. What I would like to recommend is that we adopt these tonight and we do some community outreach before we take this to the board. I think doing some community outreach and getting that input will give the new board some political cover, especially if there is broad and deep buy-in for these goals. We can present that to the town board to say, hypothetically, we have 85% of the people that we surveyed support these goals. And I think that would be a really powerful message to include with our recommendation to the town board.
I think that's fine. I think that makes sense. So as far as, I mean, we talked a little bit last week or last month about what type of outreach would be done, whether I'm blanking on the name of is it Shape Superior, our website for community outreach right now, and that's how we would do it. I think one thing that would be important, just to make sure that there's no surprises at the board level, is before anything is officially started, if that's the path you guys want to go, let me note that during my notes to the rest of the board. And obviously we'll also go into the minutes, but the minutes from tonight aren't going to be done by the time we meet on Monday. I'll ask if there's any objections to you all starting a public outreach campaign. I don't see why there would be, but just to make sure that it's out there and the other board members know about it. And then I can circle back with you all, or Karen or Brian can, and give you all the thumbs up to figure out what should go, what type of questions you guys want to put out there, or how you want to do it. But I think that if you want to go down the course of, before you send a full recommendation to the board and you want to have public input to back it up, then yeah, let's move forward with some public input, but let me just run it by the board first.
I think that sounds completely reasonable, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good interim step.
So let's consider these mostly finalized for now, and I'll put an item. Ken, do you think you'll be able to do that by the time our next ACES meeting happens, or?
I'll do it on Monday. I'll do it on Monday night.
Okay, perfect. So I'll put an item on the next ACES meeting agenda to discuss further, and we'll figure out how best to start doing community outreach.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, great discussion. I really appreciate everybody's contributions on this. I know this has been a lot of iterations and back and forth, and really good discussion. So thank you all for your passion, energy, and sharing. It's been really great.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. Thanks, everyone. All right, so next on to the fall leaf cleanup.
You want me to discuss that?
Sure, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, so last year, just in general, ACES is, we have a certain pile of money or funds that we're allotted to by the town board every year to spend on basically giveaways, outreach materials, things like that. And Essie can probably talk to you more about what we've done in the past. But one of the things that we thought about last year was collaborating with the Girl Scouts on a fundraiser for a fall leaf cleanup. And what ACES did is we purchased the compostable brown bags, leaf bags that you see at Home Depot and Lowe's and other places. And we did the communication to the town, letting them know that ACES was giving these out for free for people to bag their leaves. And then we let the Girl Scouts kind of take over the communication from there to let people that got these bags, that the Girl Scouts would come pick up the bags and take them to the composting facility over by the dog park. And I do have a couple of Girl Scouts here in my family, and I got to participate in helping pick up some of these bags. For the first year, it wasn't overly popular. I think we maybe picked up bags at 10 or 15 homes. And we ask for a modest donation. I mean, they don't have to donate at all, but it's kind of very similar to the Christmas tree pickup that the Boy Scouts do, which I assume some of you have participated in. Not only to just kind of support a local organization, but also support a good cause and keeping plastic out of the landfill. So what we're talking about again is, do we want to provide those bags for free? And they were just available at the town hall offices for pickup.
Hey, Jim, this is Mike Foster. How much do we have budgeted for that, and how much did those bags cost last year, approximately?
Well, I can tell you the second part. I think the bags are, maybe you get 3 or 4 bags for a couple of bucks. They're pretty inexpensive.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact number, how many we bought last year. Maybe we bought like 100 bags or something like that. I don't know, folks on ACES from last year, if you remember those numbers or not. And as far as our town budget, I would have to maybe see if Brian or someone else here, or even Ken, has kind of a state of the state on our budget, what we spent so far this year.
Yeah, I don't have access to that right now. I could definitely have Karen follow up with you guys. I mean, you're talking about the 5,000 that you get for each budget year and where you're at this point in time, correct?
That's right.
That's part of it, and just like, it only sounds like this is a couple of $100, so it doesn't sound like it's a break the bank kind of thing, but it's just more curiosity for me since I'm still relatively new to the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have an annual budget that ACES has that we can draw from, and I'm not sure exactly where we are. Thanks. Sorry, here's my toddler. I'm not sure exactly where we are in terms of our budget for this year. I expect it's we've got some funds available, just given that we haven't done as many events and stuff due to COVID. But yeah, we can ask Karen about that next time.
Yeah, you guys have.
Yeah.
You have $5,000 available, and it's not. I just pulled up our budget document that was presented to the board, and it doesn't provide enough detail. It's actually showing that you guys haven't spent any money as of June 30th of that 5,000.
I think that may actually be correct.
So if that's still the case, then you have plenty of money for leaf bags.
Well, we can leave this one alone. Sounds like a good plan to me.
Yeah. How just logistically? So you would, if you want to participate, you go to the town hall, grab a few of these bags.
Yep.
And then do you like leave your name at that point? I mean, how do the Girl Scouts know to come pick them up?
Yeah, they ran a very similar system as the Boy Scouts. They advertised it. They had kind of an online sign up, like a Google Doc.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then we picked one day, Saturday, to pick them up. And like I said, I think it netted the girls maybe $100 in donations. It wasn't amazing, but a lot of lessons were learned. I heard the Girl Scout leaders kind of talking about changes they would do for next year, and it was kind of turned into kind of a good unit fundraiser in collaboration with ACES in the town.
So they are interested in doing this again.
Yeah. I talked to my wife, who's also a Girl Scout leader, and asked her if there's interest again. The short answer is yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, sounds like a no-brainer, right?
I would agree, Steve.
James,
absolutely.
James, I have a question. I'm not too familiar with the Scouts. I mean, I kind of am, but why have they been chosen? Do they have community service that they have to do?
That's a good question. I think, I don't know, SE, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of our former members of ACES was involved with the Girl Scouts. And I think we were just thinking, and we already knew the Boy Scouts were doing the Christmas tree recycling, and again, the town composting facilities for that. So we were just maybe trying to balance things between both organizations. I don't know if they necessarily came directly to us, but I think it was just a suggestion that kind of took momentum pretty quickly with ACES. So.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we were looking for ways that we could help promote fall leaf pickup and increase, the composting, since we have the yard waste facility here in Superior, and a lot of people aren't very good about dropping their leaves off there. And so we're looking at different ways of doing that. And one of the ideas for sort of a low-cost approach was to get involved with the Girl Scouts and have them help as well by treating it sort of as a fundraiser in the same way that the Boy Scouts do with Christmas trees. That's sort of how it came about.
They do like Girl Scout cookies going door to door with leaf bags.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
or to really wondering if there's opportunities for either the town or the Girl Scouts or whomever we work with to partner with local businesses to, again, just help spread the word, and that, hey, this resource is available. And this gets back to some of our community sustainability goals in a roundabout way. So how do we engage the community more broadly to raise awareness that this resource is available?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we haven't been great as a committee, I don't think, about really posting things on social media and like the 027 Facebook groups and Nextdoor and those types of things. And so I think that could be one potential way of promoting this. We can also work with Karen in particular to make sure that it gets featured in the town newsletters that go out and get some attention that way. So.
Yeah, so obviously you guys know our leads are changing and dropping to our ground as we speak. So I think we left it up to the Girl Scouts to kind of pick what Saturday they want to do these pickups, but I think that's all this communication is gonna have to probably happen rather quickly to take advantage of, our leaves are already dropping off trees now. So, and then the other logistical thing is and Brian, maybe you can comment on this, is, of course, last year town facilities were populated with staff and someone could go in and grab a bag or whatever, but I don't know if that's the case right now. If there's someone that could hand out bags that's staffing a town facility right now, or how we could handle that.
Yeah, I mean, basically town hall hours they're 10 to 3 now. So, I think as long as someone's wearing a mask, I think something could be safely set up. If a resident showed up during those hours, we still have someone at the front desk at all times. So I think it could still happen in that format. So.
Well, Jim, would you be willing to take the lead on this and reach out to maybe Karen to just confirm what our budget is and figure out what the next steps are for moving this forward quickly?
I'm gonna vote to approve the concept again, and maybe we'll buy X number of bags, or we'll more approve a budget. We'll buy as many bags as we can for that, and then that's it. I mean, Is there some kind of approvals here to where I can move this forward with Karen with ACES support?
Brian, what are your thoughts? I don't know that we've had a formal approval process before. I guess maybe we could make a motion to, if we have budget, go ahead and buy the bags and pursue the fall leaf cleanup again.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine to just do a vote to proceed with spending some existing funds on this, just to make sure there's clear direction. So.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll make a motion to look at budgeting and, if possible, get a bunch of bags to pursue the Girl Scout fall leaf cleanup.
I'll second the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, sorry.
I have I guess it's a Robert's Rules of Order question. Since this is technically listed under discussion and not action, can we vote on this issue? And I don't want to, I absolutely support what we're trying to do. I just want to make sure that we're doing things that are consistent with, town requirements for these sorts of items.
Yeah, so I don't know that we've ever had an action items section actually in the agenda. That might be a good way of reparsing it. But generally, the discussion items, we can either decide to make a motion or not.
Fair enough.
So Brian, feel free to correct me if I'm misstating anything, but that's my understanding, is that it's pretty flexible that way.
Okay. Well, I support this then.
Okay.
What about the budget? What about the amount? Do we need to set a dollar limit that Karen is approved to buy this many bags up to X dollar amount?
You said it's a couple of bucks a bag.
You guys have any? Yeah, I'm actually trying to pull it up right now. My internet's going a little slow.
My suggestion would just be to aim for the same quantity of bags we got last time, and just stick with that. I think it came out to like $200 or $300 or something like that. So it's pretty small compared to our budget.
And do we know, did all those bags get purchased / used?
I don't know off the top of my head.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that's ask Karen.
Yeah, Karen would know those details.
Okay.
I expect so.
I think what you proposed sounds reasonable.
Okay, fair enough. I'll take that action item.
Okay, thanks so much.
And then I'll go ahead and take the action item and actually let the Girl Scouts know that we'll buy those again. And that's that. Is that any other questions, or is that it?
Sounds great to me.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Sure. So next item is discussing a recommendation for the board on the Dura route proposal. And so Greg, in a really brief nutshell, this is basically looking at, there's a landscaping sort of sustainability consultant called Dura that provide a proposal for taking the area near the path that's just north of Rock Creek and converting from sort of grass into more of a natural, naturalized space that's not just a monoculture, but something that's both water efficient and also pollinator friendly and those types of things. And so I believe last time what we had talked about is confirming that if we were to make a proposal to the board for that, it could fall into some of the existing budgeting for xeriscaping. And Ken, based on what you said earlier, it sounds like that is the case. Is that correct?
Sorry, just unmuting. Yes, I didn't hear any objections when I brought this up during the budget meeting, so I imagine that it would be acceptable.
Okay. So with that in mind, I know it seemed like it got pretty broad support last time when we talked about it and talked with Dura.
I thought Karen was gonna.
Go ahead. I think you just cut out there.
I thought Karen was going to look into the town's procurement rules. Oh, sorry. I thought the town was going to look into the procurement rules of the town.
Yeah, you may be right. Well, should we go ahead and table this for? Yeah. Well, in that case, should we go ahead and table this until next time, and we can confirm with Karen that everything's good to go?
Well, real quick, Brian, are you familiar with what purchasing threshold you all have within the Parks Department for anything that doesn't have to go out to bid?
Yeah. I was actually just going to kind of interject with that. Anything between $2,000 and $15,000 requires up to 3 quotes. Anything above $15,000 requires a formal bid or proposal. That gets posted on BidNet and on the town's website. So, and then various signatures of approval are kind of throughout that. But I don't know if that helps or not. That's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and thanks for that information. I think that came up last time, and we decided that given the amounts in the proposal, it would be below the threshold, and so it wouldn't need to go through that additional process. And my understanding,
all the same, wasn't it? It was above $2,000. The proposal we were talking about, wasn't it?
Sounds like it would have to go out for bid. We'd have to get at least 3 bids because wasn't it more than 15,000?
all combined it was,
Yeah.
but individual pieces were within that threshold, and so I think I'll have to go back and look at the recording. But maybe we should table this and then just bring it up next time. Unless, I don't know, what are people's thoughts?
Well,
Alternatively, I guess we could recommend it and then just see what the board take it from there.
I mean, we should, if we think it's a good idea that we want to propose, then that's probably true whether or not sole source, contracting is available. Like if we think it's a good idea, we think it's a good idea, I would propose. And if it has to go out for bid, then going out for bid would be the way to get it done, right? I mean, I think that the discussion for us is if we think it's a worthwhile activity for the cost.
So I have a question. This is Greg. Did they come to us, or we kind of sought this out as a project for the town?
A little bit of both. The town had worked with Dura in the past, and so they had kept sort of lines of communication open and have been interested in talking with ACES and staying in touch with regards to sort of water-wise landscaping, those types of things. And so that's sort of how it worked out. We reached out to them to get their thoughts on. We were sort of looking for potential recommendations around water-wise landscaping, and since that's sort of their core area of expertise, they offered to come chat and put together a proposal for some work for a project. So they wouldn't necessarily do all the implementation, but they do the design work. And actually, that may not be true. But yeah, that's basically how it came about, is just looking for have someone who's worked with the town before to help identify some potential opportunities with regards to.
So are they more of like a consultant? They don't actually do the work. We'd have to find individual companies to perform the work.
I believe they have. I believe they would do the contracting to do the work.
Okay. Are there other companies that we know of if we do have to go out to bid to get 3 bids to do this?
So I pulled up the presentation that they gave us, and they had 3 different areas of cost. So one was the irrigated landscape, and that was almost $18,000. The second piece was the mixed / disturbed area, and that was just over $10,000. And then they also had an area for the pollinator garden, and that was about 3,000. I think what for the purpose of what you all are trying to accomplish, if you all believe in this project and you want it to move forward, I would suggest just putting forth a recommendation to the board that we move forward with this project. And if you want to even try to make it, at least in my mind, a bit easier from a budgeting perspective, you within your recommendation, you could say something along the lines of integrate it into the 2021 Xeriscape program or something along those lines. And then that, I mean, the town's going to have to go out and procure somebody to do that work. Unless Brian, you guys are doing all that work, but I imagine it would get worked into somebody else's contract anyway. So that could be an easy way to get what you guys want accomplished, and you don't have to worry about the bidding process. That can just get figured out on its own.
That sounds good to me. Does that work for others? We just go ahead and make the recommendations, or let the board and town take it from there.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that also maybe gives us the opportunity to consider like I thought that pollinator idea was really cool. I mean, there's nothing that would limit that to that particular area. It'd be great to kind of have that in a couple of different areas around the community.
Yeah,
So-
and part of the idea behind this is that it could be sort of a demonstration project, and so if we get approved and it works out really well, then we could expand it potentially.
Yeah.
Do something similar to other areas in the community, and so it could really be sort of a test bed for something that could have a much wider applicability, which would be really cool.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess in that case, I will make a motion to. Sorry.
Whatever it was, I liked it. Seconded.
Yeah, there you go. I'll just let him do that. I'll make a motion that the board move forward with the Dura route proposal and project, ideally using funds from the Xeriscaping budget line. Does that?
Yeah.
This is Mike Foster. I'll second that.
Yeah. Seconded. Yeah.
All right. All in favor?
Yeah. What
right.
are we, thumbs up. What are we doing?
One says aye.
We all approved?
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
I'm
All right.
taking notes here, by the way. So minutes, I mean.
Okay, so I think the next item is with regards to sprinkler audits and just sort of continuing that conversation about sort of next steps from the audit that Mac talked about from the town. So Jim, I believe you brought this up. Do you want to sort of lead the discussion here?
Yeah, I can start this off. Yeah, so we reviewed that audit here. Well, I did the last meeting, and then I think you all a couple meetings ago. And I really felt like the audit didn't really cover some of the root problems with our irrigation system. I really felt like it kind of covered anything you'd expect on any system, you know, keep things repaired, working well, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like there's some kind of big picture things I wanted to throw out for discussion with you all. I mean, one, we're already kind of starting down this path, but let's start with what needs watering versus what doesn't need to be watered. You know, where can we remove things that don't need watering? And I think that starts with some grass. You know, we have a lot of grass in Superior, and don't get me wrong, I like grass, I like green grass, but at some point we gotta ask ourselves as sustainability people, how much grass do we really need and how much do we need to spend watering it? And as the West continues to dry out, where do you draw the line? And I'm not suggesting brown grass or weeds or alternatives that don't look pretty. There are lots of pretty alternatives to grass that are low or no maintenance. So that's kind of a big picture question. And like, who is it, us that needs to assess what grass we need and don't need around the town? Or do we put that on someone else? That's one of the questions. And then how do we assess our overall irrigation system design, watering times, and minimizing overspray? Because again, the water audit didn't address any of that. And I'm sure you guys all walk around town like I do. And in fact, can I share my screen? Is that okay? Because I have a picture I wanted to show the town I took here this morning. And let me show you. This is actually what I was trying to describe to you guys here last week. One of our design, or one of the design. You guys see this right here? Is that yes? You guys see? Is that yes?
Yeah, see it now.
Okay.
I see it now.
So this is right along Colton right here. And this is what I was trying to describe to you guys last week, which I've seen around town, is that you have sprinklers watering not only this, but over the sidewalk and onto the grass on the other side. I'm not saying the whole town is like that, but they did this to save money. You know, one line, one set of sprinklers. The right way of doing this would be 2 lines, 2 sets of sprinklers, and not watering the sidewalk. And then yeah, you got the overspray and everything else going on here. And that's the other thing, is that if you look at fundamental sprinkler design, all the sprinklers are right along a curb or right along the concrete. So how are you going to avoid overspray when the sprinkler is right up against the street, which is another design issue, right? Which the audit didn't look at that kind of stuff. So that's why, you know, so there's the design. You know, we heard, I'm sorry, what was his name? The guy from the town that talked to us about the irrigation system last week, the Parks and Recs. Matt. I mean, Matt sounds like he's still trying to optimize the watering times as well, which I know is not an exact science. I mean, there are automated controllers that look at moisture, rain, all that kind of stuff. But how do we look at watering times? And then my last point, which I already mentioned, is minimizing overspray. And all of this is in the theme of saving water, reducing the maintenance costs, saving the town money, and so forth. So, all right. That's my preamble. I'll open up to you guys, see what you think.
Yeah, so I think the meeting before last, maybe, Matt provided more in-depth information about sort of the town's current approaches. And I think sort of what I took away from that was that we have, you know, not the most ideal system in terms of the sort of layout as it was originally put in, but what we've been doing is moving towards trying to reduce overspray as much as possible and using weather. So we have a whole automated sprinkler system that uses weather to determine the correct watering amounts. And so, I'm sorry. And so the sense I got is that, that he's aware of a lot of these issues and is trying to make improvements over time. And at the same point, if there's particular things that we notice where there's like particularly egregious examples of, you know, something not working as it should, then that's something we can also bring up, and so they can be able to respond to that. You know, our town staff is relatively small, so I got the sense that he was pretty responsive to a lot of these issues. And while there's, you know, nothing's likely to be perfect, there's certainly, you know, if there are specific things that we notice, I think they would be responsive to going in and making those adjustments.
Okay.
You know, we just also talked about the Dura root proposal. A big hunk of that, you know, I like the pollinators and that, but another chunk of that was replacing or adding some things that would require a lot less water, right? So in some sense, you know, we just talked about the pollinator thing as a test run. I mean, that whole swath could be a bit of a test for, you know, do these other combinations of different kinds of plants and stuff like that ultimately lead to less watering needed, right? It wouldn't mean, if I remember right, like ripping out the sprinklers or not, they just wouldn't run them unless they had to, right? You know, if we just had a, you know, really, really hot few weeks and we had to run them to keep everything from dying. So that's
Yeah.
another good aspect, I think, of addressing some of these some of these issues is also thinking about what could we put out there, and this would be a good test case for that.
Yeah, I think that was definitely one of the original sort of drivers of reaching out to Dura in the first place, is seeing if there were some alternatives to grass that would be, maybe if not xeric, basically, vastly reduce our water that we have to use for irrigation in those areas. And for this particular proposal, it would basically, once everything, all the native plants and stuff get established, it should be able to basically turn off the irrigation entirely to that entire area, which would be great. So.
This is Mike Foster. Sort of related to all of this, has the town ever had any discussions, or has ACES had any discussions around this concept of quote unquote green streets, where you use stormwater runoff to effectively irrigate the landscaping that's along the streetscape?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But I think that'd be a great thing for us to look into potentially. So Jim, I don't want to cut this short. I know you do have one other item. So are there specific things that we could discuss now that would be helpful, or, I don't want to give short shrift to this.
Well, I mean, I guess, I don't know if it's one, and if I'm the only one that is really pushing this hard, I don't, we all need to kind of be a little bit on the same page here. So I don't want to just drop action items for myself if people aren't not noticing this stuff and feeling as strong about it as I am. I mean, like, I was just going on a walk here the other day along the green belt there along McCaslin, up there just north of Indiana. And you got the houses backed up to the west, and the grass you're walking on is like a sponge. I mean, it's soaking wet and muddy. And I see, just that strip of grass all on behind those houses there, kind of on the other side of the West Torrey's Peak. I mean, it's all irrigated. There's holes dug up for the irrigation boxes. They're making repairs because valves are broken or leaking. So there's more repair costs for grass we're not really using much of. I mean, I guess for me, I'm like seeing tons of opportunity here. And I mean, just to do this little xeric project is a great case study, don't get me wrong, but that's going to get very expensive to do that across all these areas in the town. And so I'm not suggesting xeric. I mean, some of these things might just be gravel and trails that we replace grass with. Kind of like the gravel trail there north of Colton along McCaslin, stuff like that. But I'm just seeing a lot of opportunity here, and I just don't know if we should have action items that continue thinking about this, bringing that back in, let it go. What do you guys think?
So, Jim, this is Mike. Are there some specific things that you had kind of alluded to, that there's some specific things that you didn't see in the report? So would a next step be to identify what those specific things are, and have either Matt or somebody else take a look at that and try to address those items that you've identified? Is that a good next step here?
Yeah, I mean, we can go that route, but I kind of feel like we would need an irrigation system design specialist that designs these systems for water efficiency to really take a critical look at our system. And I just don't feel like that audit report took a very critical look at our system. And they only looked at Purple Park too. So, I mean, we got like Matt said, we got lots of controllers, lots of sprinkler heads. And, Purple Park, we're not going to tear out grass there because people use it. And I'm not suggesting tearing out grass where kids play soccer and families have picnics and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of just dead zones of grass that we're irrigating. I don't think are really getting much recreational use. They're just sitting there using water, and that's it.
So, Jim, just from my perspective, based off some of the, I think it was maybe a year or so ago or whenever it was that we had a brief discussion at the board level about this. I think what was missing from the conversation a year ago was the specifics of what exactly do we want to change. And basically what you just said is where the board landed. Obviously, we're not going to rip out Purple Park. We're not going to rip out any of these iconic areas within town that are both used and kind of a defining feature of the area. But there are other areas, but what specifically are those areas? And before any of the other board members were really willing to move forward, they needed to know exactly what was being proposed. So I think what was missing is specifics. And I agree with you. I think the report that came to this committee a month or two ago didn't include all that, but I also don't think that was necessarily the intent of that report. I think it would be probably a fairly hard sell at the board level to consider and contemplate a redesign of our sprinkler systems all across town, unless, of course, again, if we can specifically identify that there is a stretch of sprinklers in areas A, B, and C that are obviously wasteful, and a redesign would not only be both resource advantageous, but it would also be economically advantageous because we're just watering things for no reason. That's the type of specifics that if that could come forward to the board, that would be helpful. So if this is something that the committee is interested in, I think it's probably doing some type of boots on the ground work to go out and specifically identify the areas that you're concerned about and somehow bring that in through a recommendation to the board. That way the board can actually consider it as a full project rather than a just kind of conceptual conversation.
So Ken, with that in mind, I feel like we'd probably want to bring Matt into that conversation, because I can look at a grassy area and say, yeah, I think it's wasteful, but from his perspective, he may have a different thoughts on that. So, you know, to Jim's point, I agree that we have a lot of opportunity to reduce water waste on sidewalks and roadways and things like that. So, you know, if it's the ACES committee or a subcommittee of ACES walking around community saying, hey, these are areas where our eyes see things that there might be some opportunities, and run those through Matt, and he might be able to have, you know, provide some context or input for us that we can then shape into a recommendation for the town board.
And I think that's really helpful. And there is precedent already. I mean, the ProStack Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, they've done outdoor amenity surveys where they've actually gone out and done surveys of the amenity and the condition and what type of maintenance needs to be done and what type of improvements there can be. So this is the type of stuff that would certainly fall, I think, well within the realm of an advisory committee. So that'd be just fine.
Okay.
Can I just ask one question also? Is it possible, I mean, I'm sure it must be very expensive, but like improvement of the soil, like when I heard the grass was like a sponge, I think I also heard about clay soils here. It's very difficult to calculate, and you know, the saturation, it's like, so like the, you know, topsoil improvement, I think it might help with, you know, saving water, but it must be pretty expensive. Like I have 4 flower beds and it like takes a lot of soil, you know, to fill them in. So just a question.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my
Well,
perspective, no, I was just going to say that, you know, to Ken's point, I think the problem in the past has just been, unless they're very specific things that we can identify, it's sort of hard to, you know, come up with something concrete to move forward. And so I think, you know, we could either look at using some of our budget potentially for like a consultant to come in and provide kind of a second look. There may also be opportunities, depending on if Matt's okay with this idea, but having sort of like a community engagement portal where people could flag specific things that aren't working. And so that would be a faster way for Matt and his team to be able to identify problems and address those, rather than just sort of, you know, as they happen to wander around and see those things. So I think, you know, I think it's definitely worth pursuing this. It's just a matter of how we get more specificity so we have something actionable.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it might not be the true purpose and goal of the app, but we do have the Superior Click and Fix app where residents, if they see something, they take a picture or send a message, identify where the issue is, and it comes into town staff for remediation. If you all were to do some type of public outreach campaign and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Has anybody else out here in the community seen it? And if you have, use the Click and Fix app, and that automatically starts logging this, and we'll have a ongoing log of the different areas and issues that people are seeing around town. So kind of put the legwork out to the community than having you guys do all of it as well.
I wonder though if they just start getting flooded with wet sidewalk complaints, if that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, well, and I don't think they'll just go out and make the fix, but at least in my mind, and again, I'd want to hear from town staff as to whether this is just a totally awful idea. But at least it's a way to start collecting that data. And if there's a better and easier way to collect it, then by all means. And I don't think we would expect town staff to get out there and fix these. However, it could be a way to at least just log the locations.
And I also just had a thought. I don't know how crazy, but is this also something as the Parks and Recs Committee is going through their process? I mean, this seems like this would be a part of that in a way, right? Because it's about maintenance of some of these facilities. I mean, is there a way to perhaps partner with them on this particular issue? And does that intersect with things they're already doing and thinking about?
Stephen, to that point, how I would envision this is maybe as ACES, we go out and we basically identify on a map, hey, here's the areas where we see some opportunity. And to your point, we turn that over to the Parks Committee and say, are there some opportunities from an operations standpoint to improve efficiencies or reduce water usage or not have spongy grass?
Well, and then the other thought I had was, there is this money for xeriscaping, right? Who's sort of in charge for deciding how that money is going to be spent? What projects are going to be taken on? Because that sort of aligns a little bit with some of the problems here, right? I mean, I guess maybe Ken, I'm asking you.
Yeah, so it'll be town staff ultimately that is responsible for implementing it. The high level conversation during the budget meeting is that it was more or less earmarked for transitioning the medians and that sort of thing. But okay. I think it's open for conversation. If there is a higher and more pressing need in the community for that same type of service, then why not have that conversation? I would say, assuming that it stays in the budget after Monday night and it does go forward, that could be something that you all request a presentation from staff in early 2021 to get a better idea of how is that money going to be used this year, and can we have any input in it? And I think that would be the best way to kick off that conversation.
Well, I know we're running over on time, but I guess one last question. I mean, should I take it upon myself to start marking up a map of Superior of areas of grass that I think could be better used or not used as grass? Basically remove the grass, do something else with it? Or is that something we can lean on Parks and Rec or Matt to take a first stab at?
So I think it would probably have to be you all that would take the first step, mostly because town staff would take their guidance from the town manager, takes his guidance from the board, and there hasn't been any direction from the board to the town manager to go out and do that. And that, I believe, would typically fall kind of outside the realm of day-to-day responsibilities. So it'd be a new project. So it would almost be a new project you're asking for. So if it's not going to be you guys, I think you need to send it through a recommendation up the chain and get the board to approve it, and then the town manager can flow it down to have staff do the work.
Okay.
Seems like you have a good eye for it, James. Like you could knock off some areas pretty quick.
I've lived here almost 20 years, you know, and had kids and soccer practices and everything. I have a fairly good idea, and I walk around the town all the time walking the dog. So I think I can mark up a map actually pretty quickly and then present it to the ACES maybe next month. Should we do something like that, SC?
Yeah, that'd be great if you're willing to do that.
Okay. Well, maybe we just leave it at that and then discuss things further on whether pretty soon the sprinklers are gonna be off. So, but we should still keep the.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for
Thank
that
you.
discussion. That's good. I think that'll be super helpful in getting some more specificity that we can move forward with. The last item, I know we're a bit over on time, but just want to raise the fact that we had a proposal in front of the town board to adjust the waste contract and the RFP to include different sizes of waste containers for residential service for both recycling and trash, and then also look for electric providers that could offer electric trucks as well. And the town board only took sort of a portion of a recommendation. And so Mike Henson in particular wanted to kind of touch base about that. And so Mike, do you want to talk a little bit from here?
Yeah, I think this can be a brief just discussion item, and I'd probably ask anyone who was present at that board meeting to weigh in, which I think was you, Ezzy. I think you were there, and then Ken.
Yep.
But you know, we made a couple of recommendations. The board discussed the recommendations, and then some of the things that we wanted did not end up in the RFP. And so, really, my discussion points here are just: do we think that? I just want to like debrief. Do we think that the board disagreed with our recommendation? Do we think that we, you know, did not express a clear enough recommendation? I just want to see, you know, in a case where we've discussed something, proposed it, and then it has not happened, so that we understand where we went wrong or where things went wrong and what we can do better in the future. But
I think from my perspective, since I presented that, I think the board wanted to keep the discussion fairly short and already had a good sense or a sense of what they wanted, and that they didn't want a more complicated RFP process. This could just be my perception, but it felt like there wasn't really an interest in having a dialogue and understanding where we were coming from with our recommendations. There was sort of just like, here are the recommendations. That's too much. Let's just cut it down, which was a little bit frustrating from my perspective. Because I would have liked to have more dialogue and be able to better, you know, explain the rationale behind why we're asking for all these different things, because I don't think that really came through necessarily. And so I think from that perspective, it may be that if we're going to have sort of a more complicated proposal in the future, that we more clearly state exactly why each of those are important, each of the things we're asking for up front in a sort of very concise way, because I think otherwise it's easy to just go, well, this is too much stuff to do, so we should just simplify it. But that was sort of my own sense. I don't know, Ken, if you.
Yeah, see, this is Mike Foster. I tuned into the trustee meeting back in August, and I would agree that I think there's perhaps a disconnect in the level of understanding of what the perception that it would take, quote unquote, more work on the haulers or potential responders to provide a cost for a 32-gallon cart option versus a 64 versus a 96. And I think to your point, my impression was that the trustees were just trying to make this really, really super simple and streamline this to the greatest extent possible. So that's kind of my take on this. And I provided a cost spreadsheet that is pretty common in the waste industry to a few trustees, in the hopes that providing some clarity on, hey, what this really could look like and how easy it is. And it's pretty standard in the solid waste industry to provide, you know, a cost proposal for a 32-gallon cart once a week and an organics cart and a recycling cart. But I think to your other point, I think how we communicated that's probably a gap. And I think a good lesson learned for us in how we present complex information in a fairly straightforward and streamlined way that's really easy to understand.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and I'll second almost everything that was said there. That was a very frustrating discussion and evening for me, sitting on the other side of the dais for that one, the virtual dais, that is. I had a terrible migraine that night, so I was having a hard time thinking on my feet, which did not help when there was dissent from the board, the rest of the board, to kind of move forward in this way. But I think my lesson learned there is that there was not a strong understanding of exactly why all of those different options were necessary and why it would be complicated. And I think Mike, what the spreadsheet provided afterward was very helpful. And I think that would have set aside some of the fears during or concerns, I should say, during the conversation. I think one of the things we've seen during other proposals that we've put out, or projects we've put out to bid, is that if we make it overly complicated, or there's too many terms or too many conditions or too many asks within it, we then get limited responses, and then we end up paying higher costs because of it. And that was, I think, just a general fear from the board, but based off what you provided in this circumstance, that was probably an unfounded fear. But getting back to keeping it simple, and I think in hindsight, if ACES would have put forth a single or two recommendations of this is the size bin you want, this is what it is, that would have been much easier to digest from the board perspective, and I think probably would have been adopted as an option. I think it just got confusing for many of the board members, and the whole why of why we needed so many options got lost along the way. But I had some conversations with town staff to see if we could still broaden what we put out in the RFP. I haven't actually seen what went out there, so I don't know if any of it did, or if it was just what was discussed that night. But beyond what all you noticed, I don't have much to add to that, except I'm frustrated.
I have a question for maybe Brian or maybe Ken. Are there still opportunities to put out addendums for this RFP? Because one thing that really stands out for me, and I mentioned this in the email string, is that it specifically says in the RFP that carts shall be no smaller than 96 gallons. And so if you have a 96-gallon garbage cart, 96-gallon recycling cart, and a 96-gallon organics cart, that is going to take up a lot of space in your garage or your yard. And really, if you're recycling and you're composting, you don't need a 96-gallon anything. You probably need a 32 or 64-gallon garbage cart, probably a 64, 96-gallon recycling cart, and a 32 or 64-gallon organics cart, which takes up a whole lot less space in one's backyard or garage. So again, question for Brian or Ken, is there an opportunity to put out an addendum to maybe clarify that not all options have to be 96 gallons?
Yeah, I'm just looking, the RFP proposal deadline was October 2nd. So unfortunately, I think that's passed. Yeah.
All right. Rats.
Well, having been a consultant for 20 years and responding to RFPs, we can throw out the RFP and reissue it. I've seen owners do it. They didn't get the bids they wanted. So it's not the end all be all, and I doubt the town board wants to deal with it. But I really like Mike's point. I mean, down there in Sagamore, those backyards are tiny. I mean, the plots of land are tiny. Where are you going to store all these big 96-gallon containers out there? And I mean, I was on that meeting as well with Essie, very frustrating. But we were the last on the agenda, and it was 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
The board wanted to deal with this discussion that was obviously too complicated, even probably at 5 o'clock at night. But it's just, it's just, I don't know if we need to do more educating, I guess, up front. Maybe these little 5-minute windows to get them up to speed and experts on solid waste aren't long enough.
Are there opportunities to have a 30-minute board briefing where they're not expected to take action, but where we can maybe get into the why a little bit more and provide some more context around kind of industry standards and what other communities are doing, so that there's context for the Board of Trustees to say, oh, we're not an outlier here. We're well within the normal bell curve of our requests.
That is a possibility. There's time set aside at the beginning of each meeting during the presentation section that if you all have interest in providing a presentation, we can get you guys on that. One thing that I know other committees have, again, not necessarily been involved in the selection process, but at least they've been able to hear updates on our contracting process. Brian, is it possible for you to follow up with, I don't know if just redirecting it to Karen or maybe talking to Leslie to see if we can find out how many firms have actually put in bids under that solicitation that went out, or I don't know, is there other information that you all, I mean, there's kind of a tight line that needs to be walked, not to divulge too much information since it's the formal contracting process, but I agree. If we're not getting what we want, I'd rather hear that earlier than later. That way, that way we can make a U-turn sooner. I mean, we need waste. We can't move forward into the next year without a waste contract. So chances are, when this finally comes to the board, it's gonna be too late to say no. So I don't know, Brian. This is more of a staff question. I don't know how much you can share, staff can share with the committee to help the committee understand and maybe provide feedback if that's possible. But maybe that's just a conversation you can bring back and have in-house, and then have somebody report back to the committee afterwards.
Is there, and Brian, is there a selection committee that's made up of either town staff or ACES committee members to provide some insight and input on who we eventually select? Maybe not the financial piece of it, but from a service delivery standpoint, customer service standpoint, are we getting value for the proposals that came in? If there is that opportunity, I would certainly volunteer my time to be part of the review committee. And if I need to sign an NDA, fine.
Yeah, I mean, typically with those RFPs, there's a number of town staff that are a part of, accepting them, and then obviously going through the various scoring criteria, and then obviously leading up to the eventual selection that's presented to the town board for approval. So as far as I know, they're in that process right now with these. I don't know to what extent. I can certainly have Karen follow up with you guys as far as how transparent she can be with that. I'm not sure, but I'll definitely have her follow up with you guys on that, kind of where they're at.
Great, thank you.
I mean, I know my suggestion to throw out the RFP and start over is kind of probably not realistic at this point. But I've also, again, I've had owners reach out to the short list of consulting firms to answer additional questions too. So still ask for more information to all or your short list. It's possible. You can, time hasn't passed until you sign the contract. Even when you sign the contract, you can still ask for this pricing anyways. I mean, it's not dead yet.
Right. Because the current contract expires at the end of this year, so we still have a couple of months. And I realize from an attorney standpoint, there's contracting language and negotiation and signing all that kind of stuff. But to your point, James, we've got some time. We're not in crunch mode yet.
Well, I'll add another agenda item for next month so we can bring this up again. And I think in general, one thing that might be helpful for future proposals that are text-based is also maybe to have an executive summary about why specifically, kind of like the big picture of why we're asking this and why these particular recommendations are both reasonable and useful. And maybe that would be helpful too. So.
Yeah, just my concluding contribution to this conversation would be that, there's a missed opportunity here, but also in the future, anytime the town is contracting for any services, it's an opportunity to encourage or require more sustainable actions from our contractors, and it can be an important leverage point that the town has to achieve those goals we talked about. So I would encourage this committee to continue finding all those opportunities for significant RFPs to evaluate that and say like what would be a sustainable version of providing this service, and let's try to make a habit of asking for sustainable options anytime we contract.
Yeah, great point.
And I would also, and again, maybe this is more discussion next month, I personally would be interested in participating on these sorts of review panels. Again, I know I'm not town staff. I'm coming at this from a different perspective. And so making sure that a variety of perspectives are included as part of the evaluation process, I think is important. Again, it helps to provide, I think, a stronger recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and, you know, gives them more insight into, yeah, there was some community input as a part of this process. And so we're feeling really good with the recommendation that the town staff is making.
Well, thanks everyone. I think this is all really good discussion. I want to, you know, since we're pretty late, I want to go ahead and wrap up. But are there any final comments anyone wants to add?
I'll move to adjourn.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We can adjourn the meeting. Appreciate the discussion tonight.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Thanks. Have a good
Good
one.
night. Bye-bye.
Good night.